Welcome to class. Once again, intervals in between a 1 and an 8, all kinds of cool things. Tonight, besides those every single chromatic stepping things which are called intervals here, and I want to talk about the 4th and the 5th in between these two things, the 1 and an 8. There's a number 4 and then there's a number 5 in here. It's part of the cluster system. The 5, which sits, like, to me, in the middle practically, as well as the 4, which sits like right in the middle practically. Oh, the 1 and the 8, let's see if I can just get back here a little bit. Whoa! Right here. Have one note in between. This note in between is what? It is what called? It is not a 4, it is not a 5. There's a certain distance, by the way, between a 1 and a 4. And there's a certain distance between a 1 and a 5. Bring, ding, a 5th, bring, ding, a 4th. But in between a 4 and a 5, there is a note. It's proven by looking at the keys. If you look at the 3s and the 2s, 2s, 3s, 2 3s, those 2s and 3s, you see them sticking right at you. If you start at C and you go from C to C, all on the letter side, going sliding down off to the letters, from the sharps off to the letters, and you go C to C, those notes which are sharps that are sticking out of you, you have to identify in order to know every single possible number, plus sometimes letter or a little word like MAJ, that goes with a number that is in between the number 1 and the number 8. Yes, there's a 5. Yes, there's a 4. Yes, there's a 3. Yes, there's a 2. Yes, there's a 7. Yes, there's an 8. Yes, there's a 4. Yes, there's a 6. Yes, there's a, yes, there's a, yes, there's a. But, turns out when you go C to C, you get a 1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a 5, a 6, a major 7. Ding 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 from Major Street, from the great story of when the major folk went out there and were in their zoning board, and then all of a sudden the zoning board got a little bit quicker over on Bluestown and claimed the number 7, and so all of a sudden they were stuck with the 7th house on their block, which started with the number 1 house and went to number 8 house per block. And they said, oops, we got to name it something because we want it to be the 7th house on the block. So they put an MAJ for major city, major street, major everything, ding, long, whatever you want to call it. It was major because it was 1/2 step not touching 8. All these little incremental little things that are so cool. 8 touches major 7. All right, given. 4 does not touch 5. Incremental little instance. 4 has a note in between. 4 has a note in between. What note comes after 4? If you have a 1, there's a 1. If you have a 3, there's a 3. If you have a 4, there's a 4. If you have a 5, there's a 5. But there actually is one note sticking out in between, because if you look, ow! It's a battery pack that just hit me in the leg. If you look at the keyboard, once again, and if the notes are sticking out at you that are sharps, and you're going C to C on the letters, and you're trying to figure out how to identify, when you get to that 4th C, D, E, F, C, D, E, F, 1, 2, 3, 4, C1, E, D, 2, E3, F4, that next to note that is sticking out of you in between F4 and G5, that one whole step, that one note in between that's sticking out of you, that F sharp, you know what it is called? The address is +4. Plus, the number plus, not the number, the symbol plus in front of a 4 makes that F sharp some note identified. It is a +4 away from 1. It is a +4 in between 1 and 8. It is a +4. It is not a 4. It's not adding a 4th. No. It's not adding a 4th. No. It is making a 4th different. It is putting a note in between and identifying it the 4 and the 5, because if you go all the way back to, you'll just have to imagine this, the zoning board meetings where we had a thing that said there was a whole step in between a 4th and the 5th house, just like there was a whole step between the 1st and the 2nd house and the 2nd and the 3rd house, and there was only a half step between the 3rd and the 4th house. As you know what I'm saying, the 3rd, you know, the boot, no, not the boot, just the 3rd. And the 4th house touching each other was the first time that anything touched each other in the first little cluster of 1, 2, 3. Because 1, 2, 3 always had something in between. The first in between was the C sharp sticking out at you. The second in between was the D sharp sticking out at you. Then you jump to the next grouping. The first sticking out at you is the F sharp, then the G sharp, then the A sharp. Why are these all there? The only one that is not identified is the first one. From then on, those next 4 are identified throughout all of the towns. So if you're in one town and they have 8 houses per block, and they have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, major 7, 8 houses, addresses, you could say, oh, I know the major 7th house or the 7th house of a major street because it is only 1 half step below 8, and 1 and 8 are the same, so it's easy to find because it's just touching each other. Turns out that Bluestown, the next door neighbor, has a thing called a 7, and it is 1 note in between, or 1 whole step down from 8. Just like there's all these in-betweens, 4 and 5, 1 and 2, 2 and 3. These in-betweens, what intervals are in-betweens, how do you see them? They're so close together. When you're looking at the keys, no matter where you are now, let's just start. These notes sticking out at you are demonstrated in C, but then if you use any starting letter for 1, E is your starting letter is 1, F sharp is your starting letter is 1, can you count off of it? Like if you start F sharp, can you find the major 7th house of an F sharp street? Yes, you can, because it's F. It's touching it right 1 half step below. And touching it. Can you find the second of every note on the keyboard that's going right, going higher? Can you find the second? Yes. No matter what note I start on. Let's say I start on F sharp. The second is G sharp because there has to be 1 note in between because that's a second. This is the second time, but not the last, that I'll always talk about 2s. Because 2s are really cool. Digital tape switch. With us all aside, we've identified another cluster. It's the cluster in the center. It's the cluster of the 4 and the 5 along with the sharp. Not with the sharp. Oh, not with the sharp. Not with the sharp. With the note in between. The note in between is F sharp. Between 4 and 5 is F sharp. Of C to C. Well then, what's the note in between 4 and 5 of E to E? Well, 1, 2, 3, 4 gets you to 4 of E, and it's A. So you have to go 1 whole step to B, and you get 1 to 5, E to B. What is so important about all this? What is so important about 4s? What is so important about 5s? I'll tell you what's so important, and I don't play this at all. The guitar was invented off of 4s and 5s. Things called power chords are 5s and 4s. Things called 4s are things that are tuned. Start on an E, up from that is an A, which is a 4. Up from A to D is a 4. Up from A to D is a 4. Then it goes to a 3. B to A to B, but then from B to E is a 4. 4, 4, 4, 4, 3, 4. I do not know anything about the guitar. I do not know how to play it, but I love the way it's tuned. Because when you play with guitar players, you're going to play a lot of 4s and a lot of 5s. I'm talking about in between 1 and 8, you can play 4s and 5, 4s and 5. Remember, I'm talking a lot about your right hand, because there's a lot about right hand playing, but it's also about distance. Where is the 4? Where is the 5? Where is the 4? Where is the 5? Whatever note is 1, you have to know all of them. You have to know all the different notes that are 1s, the distance to the right, or what I say, the distance to the height of 5. So, here's what I'm talking about. And the cool thing is, on this chart, the difference between the C major street, C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, where there's difference in distance in between the difference of like the top. Remember, I'm talking C to C here. C as 1, D is 2, E is 3, F is 4, G is 5, A is 6, B is major 7, and C is 8. But the distances in between those numbers are W's, meaning holes, or halves. Either holes or halves, including a battery pack that is halfway off the table. So, a W equals a hole. That's W-H-O-L-E, not H-O-L-E, W-H-O-L-E. A half equals a half step. What is a half step? Touching each other. Touching each other. Between 3 and 4 is touching each other. Between major 7 and 8 is touching each other because there's halves there. But every other step in a major town street has a W, has a whole step in between it. There's more of a yard. They're not half step like Chromatic City. There's more of a yard in between each house. The first house, in between the first house and the second house, there's a whole step. Between the second house and the third house, there's a whole step. Well, then between the third house and the fourth step, there's only a half step. Just like Chromatic City. But then once you're on to 4, you start going whole steps again. You go from 4 to 5, you get a whole step. You go from 5 to 6, you get a whole step. That nice big in-between note. It's in between your 4th and your 5th and your 5th, 4th and your 5th and your 6th and your 6th and your major 7th. Because your major 7th is just a half step away from your 8, which is always the same as 1. 1 and 8. Why do I say this? As a major street that has, by the way, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 houses per block. This just happens to be C Major Street. Why? Because it started with 1 with C. So that's why they call it C, because it's 1 and C. But this beginning could be any letter. It could be a C sharp, a D, a D sharp, an E, an F, a G, an F sharp, a G, a G sharp, an A sharp, or a B, or a C. Why? Because 1 can be anything you want to start on, and then you have to know, oh, I have to go a whole step or half step or whatever. Or over in Bluestown, I'm going to skip even further than a whole step. I'm going to go even squished out a little bit further. Why? Because we identified that interval before. Between 2 and 3, there's 1 note. And what is that 2 and 3 called? A boot M3. And look at it. In Bluestown, the first thing it does is go in M, not a regular 3. It goes in M3. It actually hops it would be like in Major Town, hopping from the first to the third house. Instead, this one is hopping from the first to the second house. But it's almost a third away. It's an M3, a minor third away. It's an actual interval though. It's an interval. Dinger! It is an actual interval away from some other note, an M3, not a 3, an M3. Why? Because, hold on, gotta hold the battery back when I do this, hold on. Holding the battery back, here it is, you can see the battery back? Holding the battery back, there's a short cord. In between, here's the boot. Here's the boot. In between, whoa, whoa. I could just use the boot if I want to, I might have to. Oh, you got it, I got it. In between, this is actually the M3. That 2 and 3 is 3. Okay. So, where is the 2? It's 1 whole step in between. That's weird because everyone else is touching each other in these clusters. 2 to M3 touch each other, M3 to 3 touch each other, but 1 to 2 does not touch each other. Why? because it's the first note sticking out at you. It's that weird beginning note. It's that first note going C to C once again. It's that C sharp. Why isn't that an interval? It's not an interval because it's a measurement. It is the actual essence of music. 1/2, not one, but 1/2 is the essence of music. We move by half steps in music. We move by every single possible touching note, left or right, going to the left, going lower, going to the right, going higher. But anyways, left or right, we go touching and looking and equally looking at each a higher sharp note or a lower letter note. We go each note equal because it is identified as a half step measurement. Each time we move by that half step, whichever way. Why? Because that is what the guitar was invented over. The guitar was invented over half steps. Move by fret. Each fret is 1/2 step on the keyboard. Slide 1/2 step, slide 1 fret. Slide 2 half steps, 2 halves make a whole. W-H-O-L-E, not H-O-L-E. So half plus half, in other words, 2 frets equals a whole, right? Well, I wish that I had them all equal level, the same height as I do on a guitar to move half step by half step. When on a keyboard, I'm going up and down because I've got height on the sharp side of the street. Remember, the street is like this, and there is a higher side and a lower side, and you got to ride in between, right down the center of the street. That's where your thumb has to be, riding up and down, whether it's going to the sharp side or to the letter side, each way to feel and know where you are and feel comfortable. So a lot of time I say when you start every keyboard, just start on the sharp side only. Just play sharps only. Just feel what it's like to play some intervals, just, 2 notes at a time, an interval, 2 notes at a time, not a chord. Chord is 3 notes at a time. Chord is 4 notes at a time. Chord is 5 notes at a time. No, I'm talking about an interval, 2 notes at a time. When I tell this is an interval, then I'm telling you about 2 notes. When I tell you this is a chord, I'm talking about 3 notes. Okay, you could be critical with me or whatever and exactly say, well, 2 notes could be a power chord. Ding, you could be right. You could be right. I could go with that, although I think of a power chord as 1 and an 8 with a 4 or 5 in between, but that's my own personal opinion of a power chord. But that's my interpretation. But anyways, everything is related from the guitar to the keyboard in Studio E. I try to take the guitar, which really began music, just think of that person just sitting in the woods with an old gourd of an old log that was hollow enough, and there was either a reed of grass or a bow or something like that, or whatever, a gut strung across the hole, and when he plucked it, he or she plucked it, went boing, and they went wow, and then they all of a sudden made a little area that you could press that one string with your finger, and it would go by higher and higher. It was like this so much that they eventually refined it into a guitar with many. For a while they just had a lute, but now the lute didn't have as many as 6 strings, and it only had 4 strings, or ukulele was only that. But then it started with 1 string, then went to 2 strings, 3 strings, then all of a sudden on 5 strings, you have 10 strings, you have 12 strings, whatever. I don't know anything about guitar, but in keyboards, it also evolved off of the guitar, because the guitar was in those frets, movements, half steps, sliding 1/2, 1/2, 1/2, half, just by moving fret, 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 fret. On the keyboard, when you move that way, you're actually moving. Sometimes when you're moving like between EF, EF, and BC, BC, you're moving only a half, which is great comfort, great. But you never, from sharp to sharp, move a half. You always move at least a W whole, W-H-O-L-E, because if you look, there's always one note in between, stuck in between. Look at them. Look at the 3s and the skis, or the skis and the 2s. Even between 2, there's one note in between, D, sticking in between C sharp and D sharp. Look at all those in-betweens in between F sharp, G sharp, and A sharp. There's G and A stuck in between those. Plus then you even have 2-hop, a big 2. Oh, 2-hop makes an M3. That must be an M3 from hopping. When you go over 2, you're going an M3. You are. Ding, it's a way to look at things. First, look at the sharps, because anyways, that's how you're going to look at the keys anyways. First, look at the sharps and identify what intervals you could see. Like a 2 would be 1 note in between, right? So that's sharp to sharp, sharp to sharp, all over the place because you get twos because you always get automatic one notes in between. Look, F sharp to G sharp, one note in between. G sharp, F sharp, G sharp to A sharp, one note in between. Automatic. D sharp, C sharp, D sharp, one note in between. D, all of a sudden. I'm just saying. You get automatic in betweens, so you get to see that. But then, I have to squeeze up now because I have to touch every one. Because remember, I'm like a guitar fret, and I'm moving just up by fret, by halves. Well, the next half is to an M3. It's not to a 3 because a 3 is up another fret. By sliding up, I first get to a half. I'm not calling that an interval, but I'm calling that a measurement. Then I go to a 2. I'm calling that an interval. Then I get to an M3. Believe me, that's the name of it. M3 minor 3. M3 is a 2 note in between note. Automatically 2 notes in between. If I go to D to F, automatically only 2 notes in between. If you notice, sometimes if I go like letter to letter, letter to letter, letter to letter, letter to letter, letter, look at the in-betweens. Sometimes if I go C to E, there's 3 notes in between. That's got to be a different kind of 3. That is a 3. 3 notes in between. Ding, cool. But look, if it goes 2 notes in between, like D to F, 2 notes in between, it's called an M3. Ding, that's cool too. Identifying all those notes in between. If you're identifying all those notes in between, what is D sharp? It is an M3. If you pull all your fingers away, it has 2 notes in between. I guarantee it's an M3 because E is a 3. E is a 3. E is a 3 of C. E is a 3 of C. Alright? G sharp is a 3 of E. How did I know that fast? 3 notes in between. Versus E to G is only an M3, 2 notes in between. See? Look at the in-betweens. You get 2 notes in between, you get an M3. You get 3 notes in between, you get a 3. You get 2 notes in between, you get an M3. You get 3 notes in between, you get 2 notes in between, and 3 notes in between. I don't know which night next week we're going to go 3 notes in between, or 2 notes in between, or M3s, or 3s, or 3s, and then 4s above 3s, which touch 3s, and then going another whole step to 5s. It's really great stuff. Hopefully next weekend.